Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you the updated battle group overview for the 716th Infantry Division. One of my favourite divisions in the game, as some of you may very well know. So there isn't really too much in terms of my choices that has changed too much, but there is a little bit to talk about in terms of balance updates and a few changes here and there. So let's of course start off with the Recon. Recon's pretty simple in this division. You only have 3 activation slots available, and ideally what you want to do is get as much availability as possible, but also get like the best quality units. So I've got the availability from the Aufklärer with the 2-man squads in Phase A. There is the opportunity that you could switch this out for the Spear Troop. I've definitely been preferring the Spear Troop more recently, so like changing the Aufklärer to the Spear Troop might be a nice idea. But the thing I kind of like about the Spear Troop, or the Aufklärer, sorry, is that they come with the Kubel MG, and this Kubel MG can actually be really useful for not only, of course, 600 meter range fire support, but just like pushing salients or holding ground in specific locations. Like you can hide it behind a tree line or something, and it's just really great for that purpose. So it kind of like fills the purpose of like the BMW R75, so you don't need those at all. Has both an infantry squad and a car, so you can use the car to push salients or hide, and then the Aufklärer will get you the recon information that you need. The other thing is Fusiliers in Phase A. I do like to use these Fusiliers quite a lot. My general combination is like the Fusilier, Osttruppen and Command Infantry combo. Just because like Fusilier squads on their own can really hold their ground, which is really nice. And they also have the AT weapon at 100 meter range, which is decent for within towns when you might be being pushed by half tracks or other armored cars or whatever else. So yeah, Fusiliers I think are quite nice, strong recon units. And the only other change that you could make maybe is getting more availability by relying on Fusiliers in Phase B rather than Phase A. So those are the only sort of discussions there. You can get the extra availability if you need it in Phase B, but I tend to use these Fusiliers quite a lot, but I don't find that I ever need more than I have. So yeah, that works for me, and I think the reason I have both cards in Phase A is because I'll generally be bringing 4 or 5 squads in Phase A and using them throughout the rest of the game. So that's my 716th Recon. If we move on to the infantry, not a single thing has changed in terms of my choices in the infantry tab. I have both the Grennführer command and the Pionierführer command. Grennführer in Phase A, of course, to assist the Osttruppen, and you get an absolutely massive availability of Osttruppen in Phase A, and with the 100-point income, you can bring in 5 squads in one tick, which is absolutely fantastic. So you're going to use up that availability pretty quickly. The other thing is just these MG34s, the 800 meter range MG, really useful for pinning down enemy forces. I would bring in Grenadiers, but they don't have the extra veterancy, and they don't have the decent availability. So Osttruppen do the job, literally bullet sponges for the rest of your units, and can do a relatively decent amount of damage at close ranges, but yeah, it's just there as a pure quantity over quality. Now moving into Phase B, Pionierführer, of course, we need as much command as we can get in the infantry tab because you can't get any command extra in the support tab. And then I just have all of the units of the Italian infantry that I can get my hands on, because this is where you start to upgrade your infantry quite significantly. You get a decent close range HE of 8, long range HE of 6, and the Panzerfaust to go with it. So you're getting more standard with these infantry squads, and with the extra veterancy they can really do a decent amount of damage. The other choices in Phase B and C, well, there's not any other choices in terms of the Italian infantry in Phase C, but in Phase B you can pick up Pioneers or Grenadiers, but just generally the Grenadiers don't have a Panzerfaust, so not worth taking over the Italian infantry in my opinion. I believe they did reduce the overall availability of the Italian infantry in the 716th in a couple of balance changes, but it didn't really affect my choices of units anyway, so that was okay. Moving into the tank tab, this has changed quite a lot, and it's generally just me adding availability of these B2s because they can be extremely strong. And the other thing that has happened recently is the Panzer B2s got a price buff from 110 points to 100 points, which just makes them even more value for money than they were before. I thought these were great tanks already because they have the main gun with the AP power as well as the HE on the 75mm howitzer. So yeah, just generally like an amazing tank, pins down enemy infantry really quickly, pins down enemy AT guns really infantry at 1000 meter range as long as it doesn't get penetrated and killed. And yeah, just a really, really nice tank. Great infantry fire support in the early phases for sure. Nice and cheap and cheerful. Can bring in 1 per minute in phase A. So having both of those cards available there is ideal. They also added the Befehl Panzer 35S to phase A. So this allows you to accompany your B2s with a command tank, which is really useful now, rather than having to like run an infantry squad behind them or something like you used to have to do. So that will give these B2s their 2-star veterancy and a little bit more punching power from the 25 or from the Panzer 35S itself. In phase B, I do take another card of the Panzer B2s now to get 2 more, and I've only got 1 card of the Befehl Panzer 35s. The command now is a little bit lacking here, but it's only 1 less tank than I had before. And then moving into phase C, you can pick up even more availability of the Befehl Panzer 35s and the Panzer 35Ss, but they just really get outscaled at that point, and bringing in 75-point tanks that are just going to get 1 shot is definitely not a decent way to spend your points. So B2 is great, Panzer 35s, they fall off really, really hard because they lose the ability to be useful. Whereas like a B2 is useful throughout the game because of they have that 9 HE power howitzer. Right, moving into the support tab. The flamethrower, I think was... Actually no, the flamethrowers in this division weren't reduced in price, I don't think. So they're still pretty expensive, but the Flampanzer B2 was reduced in price quite significantly actually, from 110 to 85. That is a massive price buff of 25 points. So, yeah, I have some of these now available in phase B, just for the extra availability. And the reason I'm waiting for phase B is because I'll know where I stand in a town and I can use them more efficiently. Whereas in phase A, bringing like a Flampanzer B2 into a town straight away is actually quite risky and doesn't really tend to work out too well. You've got to get within the 260 meter range to use the flamethrower, and the flamethrower is not ideal because it's hole mounted and therefore the tank has to turn, which it doesn't very quickly, in order to fire the flames. So yeah, not the best tank in the world, but still useful in certain situations, which is why I give it a card in phase B. Now the other things that have happened in the support tab is just the reduction in use of IG-18s. I used to have 3 cards of IG-18s, the 2-star or the ×2 IG-18s from phase A. But I removed one of the cards to open up an activation point elsewhere on the division. It's basically because IG-18s aren't as good as they used to be, but they're still useful. I just find that I don't use as many as I used to. So with people really relying on artillery these days, this division's actually suffered quite a lot. Because since like the 16 Luftwaffe was added in the latest DLC, basically any static fire support weapons get targeted very, very quickly by artillery, and therefore IG-18s aren't as useful as they used to be because they die. But I am bringing the Opel Blitz munition in phase A because that's the only phase you can get munitions, and I've got some IG-33s in phase B with that 27 HG power. Good stuff. Right, let's move on to the anti-tank tab. So the anti-tank tab, again, is one that hasn't changed whatsoever with the 716th. I take exactly the same units. The only changes that I could possibly recommend is bringing in some Panzerschrecks just to allow you to ambush enemy forces. But other than that, Pak 37s in Phase A, accompanied with IG-18s, is the natural combo of this division, alongside your Fusilier, Command Infantry, and Osttruppen combo. So you got the Pak 37 IG-18, then that infantry combo, and that's pretty much your lot for Phase A. As well as, of course, the Pak 40. This Pak 40 in Phase A can really catch out a lot of players and get plenty of kills throughout a game. The great thing about it is 6 strength, which means that the Spitfire bombers, I don't think, kill it in one pass, which means it can be quite difficult to kill sometimes. And you can generally get it out of harm's way if like a mortar's coming in or whatever else. But yeah, Pak 40, 1200 meter range, 13 AP, absolutely fantastic early on in the game. Now moving into Phase B, I'm going to be choosing more Pak 40s. Again, they're still relevant in Phase B. The other choice that you can take is like the Marder 1s, but I find the Marder 1s just way too like brittle in order to use effectively. I find they get killed too easily by pretty much everything. So yeah, just not ideal. They're only 5 points cheaper than the Pak 40s, and the Pak 40s are able to conceal themselves quite nicely. So Pak 40s is the way I go. And then in Phase C, you're bringing out the jumbo killers with the Pak 43s and their 22 AP power. So 1-star veterancy on those, and I would probably have a third card of these if I could, because 125 points for a 22 AP power is just an absolute steal, and only has to kill one tank in order to pay itself off, as most AT guns do, and that's the beauty of them and why they are so damn cost efficient. Of course they are going to get targeted, but 8 strength is pretty decent. You can try and keep them out of harm's way. Now moving on to the anti-air tab, in Phase A I am going to be bringing one of the Flak 41 88 mils, and yeah, it's just I have a very high reliance on Flak 88s in this division. I actually removed one card of them though in place of these Flak Billings in Phase C. But the main thing that I think about when I use the 716th is, do I need more artillery or more anti-air in Phase A? And if I did, I would probably switch out these Flak Billings in Phase A or Phase C for like Flak 36s in Phase A, because the Flak 36s have the 1000 meter range, which is really useful for pinning bombers early, and can be quite useful for covering the air from early in the game. So that's the only sort of change that I would necessarily recommend. But other than that, these Flak 38 20 mils on the trucks are useless. The Flak Billings are okay, but prefer the 1000 meter range there. These Flak Billings on the trucks, again, not particularly great, and by Phase B you do have the 88s available and you will want to be investing in those. And then in Phase C, again, more Flak 88s available and more Flak 36s, but I think if you use the Flak 88s and Flak Billings in combo, you can generally shoot down quite a lot of troops, or planes, sorry, and the HE of the Flak Billing is actually generally quite high. So if you have them in the right spot, they can do a lot of damage, and they are relatively cheap as well. So yeah, I would say Flak 36 is in Phase A, Flak Billings in Phase C, mainly because you need extra damage in Phase C to deal with things like heavy bombers and so on. So that's the main reason for that. So yeah, just covering myself off nicely there. These Flak Billings are probably there to actually cover the 88s in the late game, because I'll be using them as pretty much direct fire support against enemy tanks. And that's how I use the anti-air tab in the 716th. Now moving on to the artillery. This is pretty similar to how I had it before, with the 40.50mm mortars in Phase A. The fact that they're 40 points makes them really useful to just like have running up behind your infantry and providing the smoke cover and just general artillery cover that you need early on. But most of the HE cover will come from the LEF H1419 that has 14 HE power, which is quite powerful at 1600 meter range. The rate of fire is relatively low and the aim time is absolutely atrocious, but once these things get on target, they can just fire forever, and they have 50 rounds each, which is really useful for just like not using up supply unnecessarily. So the combination of the 50mm mortars and LEFHs I think is the best in Phase A. You can get Lorraines in Phase A as well, but I just find that for 120 points there are other things that I'd rather be spending points on in Phase A. So moving into Phase B, you gain access to mortars, more Lorraines, but I go for the Werframmens with the 425 HE power napalm rockets. These things are absolutely badass and I love them. 85 points, really cheap for what they do. They're kind of weird to use in that when you do the fire position indicator, it doesn't give you a circle like every other artillery piece does. So the shots can be very random. You end up like friendly firing if you're firing quite close to your own lines. But in general, these things can destroy open top vehicles very easily because they leave a massive splash radius of napalm, and they also just demolish infantry if they get like direct hits and so on. So really nice. I really like the Werframmens, and bringing in both of them is absolutely ideal for me. And you can keep them by a road, fast move them around with your supply vehicles, and you're just going to be laughing. They just do a great job. 1,300 meter range, just enough to be outside of like an AT gun and not get itself killed if it's for whatever reason in line of sight in the open. But generally you have them behind cover anyway. But 1,300 meter range, yeah, just enough to be really useful. If it was 1,200 meter range, I might consider using the like Phase B mortars instead, but just that extra little bit of range makes them definitely worth it in my opinion. Now moving into Phase C, you can get Noble Werfer 41s, and you can get more 120mm mortars and different pieces of off-map, but I'm going to be going for the BEO Kubel 380mm off-map. You only get one car on a card, but just really good for like late game punching power, and also just like you can use them quite defensively. If you're struggling in the later phases, which you generally might do with 716th, then you can use this to really like slow down the enemy's advance and yeah, block off like any elite infantry you might be having trouble with, or just any pushes in general that are coming through like choke points. I used to have a second card of the these Kubels on here, but I replaced it with the Werframmen from Phase B because I use them a lot more. And that's pretty much it for the artillery. There's quite a nice range of options, but that's my choice for this one. Not too much changing there. Not really much has been changed in terms of balancing. I think maybe the Werframmen's got a little price buff along the way somewhere, but other than that, not really much to talk about. In the air tab, this is again exactly the same as I had it before. 716 hasn't really changed much. I do still play them quite often, and I don't find I need to change anything about them. I think it might just be because I enjoy playing the division so much. But yeah, the ME109G0, this is useful in Phase A for just like catching out enemy Spitfire bombers and just anything else that's like pestering you early on. If somebody's getting a bit cocky with like a fighter aircraft and you bring in like an anti-air piece like your 88, you bring in the ME109 to accompany it, and you can use that in tandem to like shoot down an enemy fighter early on. But these don't really put up too much of a fight. Once they get on the tail of something, they can shoot it down, but don't expect this to stun enemy aircraft very quickly, and it's not very accurate, so it'll take a little while. Just nice really for deterrent, I guess, more than anything in Phase A. I have been considering changing this out for like the Ju-88 in Phase A, but I just found that I would never really spend 200 points on a plane that early. So moving into Phase B, I do have the ME109 G6R6 with the 1-star veterancy. It's the only one you can get in Phase B. You can get ME109 G2 BR21s with the rockets, which could be another choice, but just in general, ME109 G6R6 fighter, reasonably low cost, does the job. and is decent cover for like the HS-129s that I also bring in Phase B. Now these things pretty inaccurate for the HS-129s because of the lack of veterancy, but if there is a tank that is really getting in your way, then these are the things that you need to kill them. And it will probably use all 12 shots on that one tank, but it should get the kill. So that's kind of what you're looking for with these HS-129s and how you'd probably use them. You can also get the ME-109 G2R1s with the bombs, the 15 HE power bombs, but not really worth bringing in my opinion. The availability is quite nice, but you'll never really have the points to afford them. At least not all of them. And now in Phase C, I do have another one of the ME-109 G6R6s. This time they come with 2-star veterancy, and that's going to take up my 4th and final air slot. There is the choice of bringing in the JU-88s with the 7 HE power bombs, or the JU-88 with the 225 HE power bombs, which is a quite nice choice. But I think I just prefer the fighters there, especially like a 2-star ME-109. Really good for like just intercepting enemy bombers and so on, which are really going to be the bane of your like fire support units on the ground. So that's the main reason that I'm focusing on fighters over like attack aircraft, because your anti-air is actually pretty strong, and you could probably play this a bit like the 17th Luftwaffe, where you fill all the anti-air tabs with like all of this juicier anti-air, like the Flak 36s and so on, and then in your air tab just have like a bunch of HS-129s and the JU-88s later on. But that's not quite the way that I play the 716th, but fair enough if that's the way you guys want to do it. And it's definitely a decent suggestion, so bear that in mind. But that is my 716th Infantry Division for now, at least. I'm sure you guys have many changes you would make to this one yourselves, but this is one of my favourite divisions, and I'm really comfortable with how I have it set up. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video, hopefully you maybe learned something. Let me know what you guys think of my division and what you might change yourselves. But in the meantime, that's all, so thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.